Well, hello and welcome to the 5 minute warning. I'm Matt Sheahan from PlanetSail.
And I'm Andy Rice from Sailjuice.
Now, as accurately predicted last time we were on a week ago, we said it was pretty rare that we're in the country at the same time. And hey, presto, a week later, we're not. Andy, first of all, just tell us, where are you?
I'm in the sunny south of France for what is being billed as the last chance regatta. Last chance being it's the last event where the remaining nations can book their spots for the Olympic Games. And we talk about nations because we don't necessarily know who the athletes are going to be. So the athletes are racing to make sure that they've got a spot for their nation, and then they hope that they will be the chosen ones. And in some cases, they already know that's the case, and in other cases, they're still racing in an Olympic trial to decide which of those athletes is going to represent that nation.
Well, in a world of uncertainty around the Olympics, the one thing you can be absolutely sure of is that south of France is going to be sunny whenever you go down there. Maybe not.
We couldn't have got this at a better time, could we? It's been absolutely brutally cold all week, but even when it's been blue skies and sunny weather, it's been brutally cold. But today, for the 5 minute warning, we bring you the perfect storm of pouring with rain and freezing cold as well.
Lovely. Perfect. Well, that's our dedication to duty. Meanwhile, I'm indoors at PlanetSail HQ, well, my office basically, in Hamble, and it's pretty chilly out there too. So now, just in case anybody's wondering what this is all about, 5 minute warning is Andy and our attempt at pulling together a sort of a quick summary. It's really pointers. We're not going to go into the story in any massive detail, but we thought that, as will have not escaped your attention, this season is incredibly busy, not least of all with America's Cup and Olympics, a Vendée Globe. I mean, three of the biggest crowd pullers there are in sailing, all happening in the same year and at the aft end of the year, if you like. So we thought we'd give a little update week by week on where we are. Now, our intention is to keep our briefing to 5 minutes, because Andy and I do have a reputation for waffling on, and we thought the only way to keep ourselves under control was to give ourselves a racing start like 5 minute sequence. So that's what we're going to do. Let's see if we can stick to it. I'm going to start a different watch. Oh, hang on. I'm going to start one that is digital rather than the analog one that I tried last time. There we go. Timer 5. Right. Now, Andy, you've told us where you are. Give us a bit of an overview as to what's actually going on.
Yeah, so we've got two regattas happening in one. So if you think that there are normally 10 Olympic events, each of those 10 Olympic events has been split into two. So you've got qualified nations, i.e., they already know they're going to the games. They're racing in one fleet. So let's say we're talking about the 49ers, got the top of the top in qualified nations. But I, working for World Sailing this week, have mostly been focused on what we're calling the last chance regatta, and that's seeing who gets those last 4 or 5 spots that are still up for grabs. So it's been really dramatic, really stressful, but ultimately, mostly we're talking about competitors that probably aren't in the medal zone. But for a lot of these nations, especially emerging nations, maybe never been represented in sailing at the Olympics before, it's sort of their Olympic medal just to get that spot to go to the games in the first place. You know, it's a dream come true for some of these riders that are booking these spots today. So we're getting some pretty obscure nations earning their spots, and that in itself is a nice aim for sailing. We're trying to achieve, I think, maybe in excess of 65 nations represented at the Olympic Games at the regatta in Marseille this summer, and we're trying to make it a less European focused sport, because that's what the IOC wants to see for all of the Olympic Games.
And just whilst you wipe your lens and give us a clear view of yourself. There you are. Right. Okay. I thought you'd gone all modded for a minute. Are there any particular classes that are sort of hotly contested for this last chance regatta? I mean, is there a sort of focus for you on what you're particularly looking at?
Well, they're all hotly contested because there are all 4 or 5 spots, or in the case of the ILCA's 7 spots remaining, and they're all hotly contested. And keeping abreast of everything that's been going on this week, and trying to keep a running tally of who's in and who's out and who's on the cusp has been an absolute nightmare. I mean, it's been quite hard brain work this week, keeping track of all that stuff. But we do know who has qualified those last spots in the kites and the IQ4 windsurfers, for example. And Elena Lengweiler from Switzerland, she could barely drive her board in the kite foil a year ago, but she's made massive progress. So she was nowhere close to being able to qualify for the Olympics at the previous opportunities, like the World Championships in The Hague, August last year. But she absolutely dominated this week, and she'd shown signs of being able to do that at the European Championships that I was at in Marmanor, Spain, about a month ago, and then she confirmed it here this week. And then Conor Bainbridge, who is probably serious medal potential for Great Britain, well, he fluffed his lines at the World Championships last year and at the Europeans in Portsmouth. Didn't manage to get his spot, which he was fully expected to do, but he finally nailed that for Great Britain at this event, and he absolutely went through with flying colours as well. So he finally got his mojo together. He had Stevie Morrison and Chris Draper working on his side, two former 49er world champions, well known in the Sail GP scene and the America's Cup scene, and they brought their expertise to help Conor achieve what he's done. And we've got so many of those stories, and we've also got some what we call independent neutral athletes. There's a Belarusian sailor that since the Ukraine war has not been allowed to compete at most events, but under IOC rules, Anastasia Valkovich is allowed to compete here. And it's a sticky subject, that one. You know, I can understand sanctions on Russian and Belarusian sailors, but funnily enough, Anastasia had been living in Ukraine for at least a couple of years before Putin invaded Ukraine, and she's the collateral damage of, you know, it's not her fault. She's just a windsurfer going about her business, and also happened to be well disposed to the Ukrainian side of the argument in that war, but has not been able to compete. But she was allowed to compete this week, and she has booked a spot to go to the Olympic Games. And despite hardly being in any international competition, just her raw speed and her fitness and her technique carried her through.
Is there, you talk of nations there just briefly, because we've already, I'm not going to look at the watch now. It's hopeless. We are useless at this.
Always going to be late starters.
Well, yeah, OCS is straight away. Briefly, is there a particular nation that looks like they're going to sort of dominate at this Olympics? I mean, the Australians have been right up there in the past. The Brits obviously have been up there in the past, but they don't look quite so strong now as a nation.
But I always think that about the Brits at this stage in every Olympic cycle, and somehow they seem to rise to the occasion when it really matters. So I really think the Brits still have a chance of being top nation. And that's certainly their stated goal. They would like to achieve that again. They feel like it's on their shoulders to keep on doing what they've done for the past 20 years. But I think France is going to be super strong on home waters. I think it's going to be the European nations more than Australia or New Zealand that will emerge as top nation this time round. And I put Italy and the Netherlands as two other strong contenders as well. I think it's probably going to come from those four that I've just mentioned, and maybe France are the marginal favourites.
Right, interesting, very interesting indeed. Well, Australia and New Zealand, certainly as far as New Zealand lead us into the next bit, because from my point of view, as you know, I've been looking at watching the Cup intently, and it's been a very, very interesting couple of weeks. We've had 4 teams launched now. The last team, the most recent team, I should say, to actually officially launch has been the British. I say officially. What I mean is, let us see the whole boat, because American Magic, just as we record this last night, put out some pictures of their boat, but they look very, very shy. They're just details of corners and edges of the boat, which you can talk about. But I would imagine in the next couple of days, probably by the time you see this, we will have seen the American boat. But for now, the British boat has caused quite a lot of comment and analysis, because it is, well, depending on which way you look at it, my point of view, from my point of view, I think I'm quite encouraged by it in many ways, in very, very broad overall terms, because it is, I hate to say this, but there or thereabouts. It doesn't look so radically different from the other 3. And of course, one of them is the Kiwi boat, which is the one boat you got to beat if you want to win the America's Cup, because they're the defenders. So it doesn't look radically different to them in broad terms, certainly not as much as it did in the last America's Cup cycle where, and understandably, it was the first iteration of those boats, and the British were right out on a limb. So that's encouraging, because I don't believe that there's any evidence to suggest that over the years, with possibly one exception, that a radical boat has ever won the America's Cup. You've got to be good at everything, not just turning up with a rocket ship at the expense of not being able to sail it. So I'm encouraged.
Especially in Barcelona. I mean, Barcelona, you've got to be ready for everything, don't you?
Absolutely. And the sea state is something that's really, really been a major concern for everybody. And you can fall off the fours, and it's going to be about getting going again if and when basically you fall off the fours in the pre-start zone in a horrible slop. But the interesting thing when you look more closely at the Brits is it is, in some ways, it is quite extreme, because it's almost like two boats in one. It's got this very unusual fine forward entry, but with a fat bit at the bottom, but then it opens out very quickly later on. And there's been all kinds of speculation about, could this be the boat that wins it for the America's Cup? And I don't want to sound like a bit of a grey-haired old geezer, but I have heard that plenty of times before, and I've been around the block enough to know that actually what tends to happen is that it's not just about whether the hull form's right, especially in a boat that's going to be flying above the water anyway. It's about reliability, it's about systems, and it's also about hours on the water. And that's the bit that troubles me the most about the British team at the moment, is that they just, and it's fact, they just haven't spent anywhere near as much time on the water as some of the other teams. And you put that alongside American Magic, they've spent a phenomenal amount of time out there two-boat sailing, as indeed have Alinghi. So, and the Kiwis are also putting it in there. The other thing I would say, just talk about the Kiwis, is that when they launched their boat, they went straight out and sailed it the first day, which was an unbelievable thing to do. Some people might not think that, but I've talked to, in fact, I was with Ian Walker actually on the weekend, racing my 400 against him on the weekend, and we were chatting away about it. And Ian said, I was saying, is it just me, or was that just extraordinary to take a boat of that complexity away from the launch and then go straight out and sail at 30 or 40 knots? And he said, absolutely. He said, you wouldn't dream of doing that with a 50-footer, a TP52 or a Max's. No way you'd do that. And this is their one shot at the Cup. If they break the boat or capsized it or had a problem, I mean, okay, they've got a while to fix it, but they've only got one boat. But the thing I'm leading up to, that even having seen that, which surprised me, last week they put out some video of them sailing in 30 knots of true wind, 30 knots of breeze. These boats stop sailing at about, I can't remember what the upper limit is now, it's 20, 22 knots, something like that. They're out in 30 knots of breeze in the back, what they call the back paddock, which is relatively flat water. It looked gnarly out there, and they were chucking in jibes and tacks and foiling around. Unbelievable. If that isn't a statement of just how confident they are in their boat, their systems, and their prospect in the Cup, I don't know what is. But it set down a marker for everybody else, and it was very, very impressive indeed.
Yeah, so still setting the benchmark. Now there's some offshore stuff as well that you've been following, Matt. There's been quite some excitement out at sea.
Yes, absolutely. Well, one of the other things that caught my eye was actually at the opposite end of the scale in terms of new boats. It was actually Maiden, the 58-foot far boat that old fellas like you and I will remember from the 1989 Whitbread race. Tracy Edwards made famous for being the first female crew to race and finish the Whitbread race. Well, she's gone round, 35 years later, she's gone around the world again with an all-female crew again in the Ocean Globe race, which is a race that sort of set out to sort of emulate the spirit of those golden days of the Whitbread race. But she didn't just go around and do it, they went out and won it, and it was really, really impressive, amazing. Heather Thomas is the skipper, just 26 years old, very experienced sailor. But in the crew, there was very few of them had ever been offshore before, and only one of them had ever been into the Southern Ocean. And they went round, and unbelievable, superb performance. Hats off to them. And they won it on handicap, which was absolutely superb. So that was pretty impressive. She arrived back in the Solent last week. And what else has happened? Oh, the other thing to look out for, just looking ahead, is it's the Transat CIC race starts this weekend. And that is a big deal. It used to be the Ostar single-handed transatlantic race. It's huge this year with IMOCAs anyway. There's something like 33 IMOCAs taking part. And the reason, Vendée Globe coming up later on this year, and this is part of qualification, training, practice, and stamping your authority all over the fleet. So that is going to be one that I'm going to be watching very closely indeed. Well, it looks like I don't think
Excellent.
we stuck to 5 minutes each, did we? But there we go.
No, terribly late this week, Matt. We do aim to get better at this. Maybe we'll tighten up. But as the season gets even busier, I think we're going to get even slower.
I think we are. Well, maybe we should turn it into a gate start rather than a line start. It's a bit more loose. I'll hang out at the outer end of it.
Matt, lovely to see you. Stay warm and dry, won't you?
I will do. Yes. Thanks for your update, Andy. And yes, if you want to follow more about what we've been talking about, there are lots of links. They're up there, they're down there, they're on emails, they're all over the place. But you'll find them, I'm sure. But anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.